Morning, guys. I wanted to do a quick little video with you guys on one of our imaginary numbers and complex numbers that's in your book, section 1.4. As always, when you guys are doing your notes, this should all be done before you do your quizzes. You should first be looking at the pages in the book that I have given you guys. So you need to read your book. And then look at the examples, write the examples down, and then you can try the practice problems. Now, I would also make sure I will always be attaching videos that go with these lessons, and make sure you watch the videos. Sometimes the video may be from me, sometimes the video may be from someone else who's teaching it. If I see a good video that I like, that I think is great, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to use that video. And then before you guys do the quiz, if there's some topic that you guys are really struggling on, you need to go ahead and email me or contact me or come by to my office and get some help on that topic before you go to take the quiz, because the quiz is kind of the assessment piece of this. It's making sure you know what you're doing. You can also use the online tutoring option, which is Upswing, and they can help you as well. You can try going to Khan Academy. And you can also go to Google and type in whatever subject area it is. Maybe it's complex numbers, imaginary numbers, quadratic equations, quadratic formula, whatever it may be. You can type that in Google, you can go and it'll pop up 1,000 other videos that you guys can watch that can help you on. So I wanted to go over imaginary numbers with you and just recap over that in case you're struggling on it. So I'm going to share the screen and let's go to the whiteboard. All right, so if you read over in your notes, 1.4 talks about imaginary numbers. And an imaginary number, the definition that you will be given is you'll see I squared, which is going to be equal to -1. This is the definition of imaginary numbers. So, this is what we start out with. And so from this, we can determine other things about I. If I wanted to find what I would be equal to, well, how do we get rid of a square? We would take the square root of this. So I is equal to the square root of -1, okay? And if we remember, if you look at your notes and we have something like the square root of -9, how do we determine what that is? Well, whenever you have a negative, you pull out, and you have the square root of a negative, you pull out an I, right? So what this means is this becomes I, and then we know the square root. So this is like saying I times the square root of 9, and this would be a plus or minus in front of it, right? And then what's the square root of 9? Well, the square root of 9 is 3. So the answer of this will be plus or minus square root of 3I. This will be the answer to this, okay? So this kind of goes back to here. So we know that the square root of -1 is the same thing as I, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, if we wanted to find I to the third power, okay, well, what is I to the third? Well, I to the third is the same thing as I to the second times I to the first, right? Because what do we do with when you have the same basis? You add the exponents. So this is the same thing as I to the third. Well, we know what I to the second is, right? We know that I to the second was -1, and we know I, right? So this begins to give you -I, okay? So I to the third is the same thing as -I. All right, let's look at I to the fourth. All right, well, what's I to the fourth? I to the fourth is the same thing as I squared times I squared. And we know that I squared is the same thing as -1. Remember, I'm going to rewrite it over here. -1. So far, this is what we have. I'm just going to leave this as, we'll just say this is the same thing as I, right? I to the third. It's -I. All right, now we're doing I to the fourth. All right, and we know I squared is -1, and I know I squared is -1. So, ta-da, we get a +1, okay? And we can keep doing this. Let's see if we find a pattern. All right, I to the fifth. What is I to the fifth? All right, I to the fifth would be I to the fourth times I. I to the fourth is 1, so we end up getting I again. All right, I to the sixth. I to the sixth is I to the fourth times I squared. All right, what's that going to give us? That's going to give us I1 times -1 equals a -1. All right, I to the 7th. It's going to be I to the 4th times I to the 3rd. I to the 4th is 1. I to the 3rd is a -I. That's -I. All right, I to the 8th. That's I to the 4th times I to the 4th. It's going to be a 1 times a 1. Do we see a pattern here? I see a pattern. Look, it goes I. It goes, it's the same thing as -1, right? -1, -I1. I, -1, -I1. So these are the 4 that you really need to know, okay? You need to know these 4. Really, the first one is, the I squared equals -1. That's the main one you need to know because you can determine the other 3 just based off that first information. So if you know these 4, you can determine any I that I give you. So for example, on your quiz, you're going to have questions. It's going to be a big number. So let's say I to the 54th, okay? What you can do is you can actually count 54 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and keep going till you land on 54. That will give you an answer. Or you can, kind of break this up and say, okay, I to the 4th before going to 54. Well, think about that. You take 54 divided by 4, it goes 13 times, all right? And that's 13 times 4 is 52. So how many do you have remaining? Well, you've got 2 remaining, right? So this is going to give you that 1. And then I to the 2nd we know is -1. So 1 times -1 is going to give you -1. So the shortcut is you take this 54 and you divide it by 4. And you get, what do we say it was? You get 13, okay? And then there's a remainder, okay? So you take 4 times 13, that's 52. There's a remainder of 2. So this is where you end up on. You end up on the -1. So let's do another one. Let's do I to the 101. All right, how many times can 4 go into 101? All right, 101 divided by 4 is 25. So it'll go in 25 times evenly. So how many do you have left over? Well, 25 times 4 is 100. So you have 1 left over. So it ends up on I. Okay. I to the 252. Okay. All right, 252 divided by 4, it'll go on 63 times evenly, okay? So that means that it goes in, you divide by 4, so the answer is just 1, all right? So these are easy problems to do, and a lot of people get them wrong, though, for some reason, but these are easy ones to do. All right, now let's look at, okay, how do we add imaginary numbers? Let's say we have an example like, I plus 4 plus 2I minus 3. All right. Remember, your imaginary numbers, your complex numbers, you're going to always have that you want it in the form of I plus BI, okay, or I minus BI. This is your form. All right, that means your real number is going to be up here. Your imaginary number is going to be back here. So it's just kind of like we do like terms. I plus 2I, that's going to give you 3I. 4 plus -3 is going to give you a 1. All right, and we'll rewrite this in that form. So it'll be 1 plus 3I. Okay. Now you can also do this in the calculator. So if you put this in the calculator, I'm going to show you now. If you guys, let's see, let's go back to the screen. If you guys will go, I have shared this on your, Moodle. Go back to it. There is a way to get an online graphic calculator. If you do not have an online graphic calculator, there's a way to get one. This is the online option. You would click on this and you can download this onto your desktop or computer laptop. I'm not going to do that here because I don't have the rights to do that on my laptop at Martin, but if you have your own personal one, you can download it if you don't have it. I'm going to, So if you look here, I'm going to show you guys the calculator. You guys should be able to see it. Let's see. All right. All right. So look at this. Here's your calculator. And if you see down here on the bottom, it's a little bit blurry, but your eye is right here where the little dot is. There's an eye. So you can actually enter this in the calculator. The problem, what was the problem again? Let me go back and look at this share screen. The problem was I plus 4 and then 2I minus 3. I plus 4, write that down, I plus 4 plus 2I minus 3. So you can check yourself using the calculator. So I do parentheses, and then I'm going to do second, and then a little dot. Okay, so that's I plus 4, close parentheses. Can you see it up there? It's a little bit blurry. I plus 4 plus parentheses, and then it was 2, and then I'll do second dot minus 3. All right, so that's what it should look like on your calculator. It's a little bit blurry. Can you see it? And then you press enter until you get I plus 3I, which I believe is the answer that we got. Yep. 1 plus 3I, sorry. That is the answer that we got, 1 plus 3I. Okay. So you can enter these in the calculator and check them, which is really nice, but I would like you to know how to do them by hand. All right, let's do another one. Let's say I want to multiply 2. Let's say we're doing 2I plus 3 times 2I minus 3. Okay. You see what happens when I do, these are called the conjugates of each other. Okay. All this is in your book. Conjugates are when we take one, we have the same numbers, except we switch the signs here. Okay. So watch what happens. I'm going to do FOIL. 2I times 2i, that's going to be 4i squared. 2i times negative 3 is negative 6i. Positive 6i. And then a negative, what, not negative 9. Negative, yes, negative 9. Oops, I put negative 3 here. All right, negative 9. All right. And so what happens is those go away. And then remember, what is I squared? What do we remember I squared? It's I squared is equal to negative 1. So 4 times negative 1 minus 9. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4 minus 9. And what's that going to give us? Negative 4 minus 9 is negative 13. And so if you notice, when you do the conjugates, you're getting rid of an I. So that's really the purpose of doing a conjugate, because when you guys give an answer in something, you should never have an I in the denominator of a fraction, okay? So we'll take a look at how do we get rid of, if we have an answer, how do we get rid of the I in the denominator? Well, that's really simple. We do the conjugate. We multiply by the conjugate. So let's say, for example, you have something like 4 plus 3i all over 2i, okay? This is not simplified. If you guys give me an answer with an I in the denominator, this is not simplified. And I want to get the most simplified answer. So how do I get rid of this I? Well, for this type of problem, you just multiply it by I on the top and bottom. Remember, whatever you did in one thing, you have to do to the other. So what happens is we end up with I times 4 plus 3i all over 2i times I. That becomes 2i squared over 4i plus 3i squared. Remember, what is I squared? That's negative 1, right? So we end up with 4i plus 3 times negative 1 and 2 times negative 1, which equals 4i minus 3 over negative 2. And then to finish this off, we would end up writing this like 4i over negative 2 plus 3 over 2, okay, which really is negative 2i plus 3 over 2. And then we would rewrite it as 3 over 2 minus 2i, because we want it in the form of a plus or minus bi. Okay, so this would be really the correct way to write that. All right. All right, let's do one more example. Let's say we have a problem 2 minus 4i over 6 minus 2i. All right. I want to get this in a form that's needed where we don't have the I in the denominator. So how can I get rid of this I in the denominator? Well, this is where you would have to multiply it by the conjugate. So what is the conjugate of this? Well, the conjugate of this would be 6 plus 2i. And you have to multiply by that on the top and the bottom. So we would have to do FOIL on the top. So 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times 2i is 4i. 6 times negative 4i is negative 24i. And this will be 8, negative 8i squared. And then on the bottom, that would be 36 plus 12i minus 12i minus 4i squared. Okay. So let's see what happens. All right, 4 minus 24 is negative 20i. And then we know the 8i squared is going to be 8 times negative 1. And then we have 36 minus 4 times negative 1. All right. And then that becomes a plus 8. So 12 plus 8 is going to be 20 minus 20i. And then this is going to be a plus 4 up here, right? That's going to be a 40. And then we end up with 20 over 40 minus 20 over 40i. And then that reduces to 1/2. And that, oops, goodness, that would be our final answer. Okay. Again, you guys can check this in the calculator, inputting it in the calculator. Email me if you guys have any questions or concerns, and I will be happy to help you guys with any questions you may have.